I've always believed that marriage is like a well-designed system, reliable, predictable, built on solid foundations that can weather any storm. For 10 years, Natalie and I had operated like clockwork. Every morning, I'd wake at 6:30 to the sound of her humming in the kitchen, coffee already brewing, her dark hair catching the early light as she moved around our Portland suburban home with complete comfort. Our life together felt unshakable. I was 34, a senior systems analyst pulling in a comfortable six-figure salary. Natalie, at 35, had never needed to work, something she'd embraced wholeheartedly after we married, channeling her energy into our home and garden. This Saturday morning in March felt no different from hundreds before it. I found her in the garden, kneeling among rose bushes she'd cultivated for years, hands dirty with soil, pure contentment on her face. Natalie called out, holding up her phone. Even from 10 feet away, I could see bright colors of a concert poster. "Look at this. Ashes and Velvet just announced a Portland date. They're coming to the Moda Center next weekend." I recognized the band she'd been obsessed with since college. Her enthusiasm struck me as endearingly nostalgic, like holding on to a piece of her younger self that predated our marriage. "That's great, honey. You should definitely go," I replied. "Sophie already said she'd come with me. We can make a whole night of it. Dinner beforehand, maybe drinks after. It'll be like old times," she said excitedly. Sophie, her sister, was one of the few people I genuinely trusted with my wife. 2 years younger than Natalie, she'd always been more grounded, building a career in marketing while Natalie chose domestic comfort. "Sounds perfect. You deserve a fun night out," I told her. The words came easily because they were true. In 10 years of marriage, Natalie had never given me reason to worry. She wasn't the type to make reckless decisions. Our relationship was built on trust, communication, and mutual respect. Watching her scroll through concert information, I thought about our wedding day. How she'd laughed when my father's attorney insisted on the prenuptial agreement. She'd called it rich people paranoia, signing papers with carefree attitude of someone who couldn't imagine our marriage ending badly. The agreement was straightforward. In divorce, we'd each leave with what we'd brought in, plus equal split of shared assets, unless infidelity was involved. That clause specified proven adultery would result in the unfaithful party forfeiting claim to shared assets. Now, watching Natalie's excitement, that prenup felt like ancient history, irrelevant as insurance on disasters that would never happen. "When's the show?" I asked. "Next Saturday. Sophie's already looking at restaurants near the venue." "God, I haven't been this excited about anything in forever. Do you remember when we saw them in college? That was back when Zane Holloway was still doing acoustic sets before shows," she said, her voice full of nostalgia. I remembered. Early date, small venue, Natalie singing along to every song. That night, I'd known I was falling in love with her. Uninhibited joy. "I remember you knowing every single word," I said. "Still do. It's going to be incredible. Zane's voice has only gotten better with age," she replied. The way she said the lead singer's name, Zane, carried familiarity I'd noticed but never considered. Harmless celebrity admiration. The rest of the day unfolded with pleasant weekend predictability. We gardened together, ran errands, shared late lunch, discussing plans for the coming week. Natalie researched the concert, showing me photos from recent tours. The following Saturday morning, I watched Natalie prepare with calm confidence. She tried on 3 outfits, settling on jeans and vintage band t-shirt. "Sophie's picking me up at 6. We'll probably be home pretty late. You know how these things go," she said, while checking her appearance one last time. "No problem. Have fun and be safe," I replied. Those words would replay countless times over coming hours, taking on different meanings until they felt like the last innocent thing I'd ever said to my wife. As I watched her car disappear, I felt nothing but love and trust. I had no reason to suspect she was driving toward a decision that would destroy everything we'd built. Saturday evening found me in my home office, surrounded by comfortable chaos of a complex systems upgrade I'd been postponing for weeks. Lines of code scrolled across my monitor, the kind of intricate problem-solving that had always calmed my mind. The house felt peacefully quiet, Max, our golden retriever, sleeping at my feet. Distant traffic providing gentle backdrop to focused concentration. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been tracking progress, noting timestamps as I'd completed each module. Natalie's contact photo filled the screen, a picture from our anniversary dinner last year, her smile radiant in restaurant's warm lighting. "Hey, beautiful, how's the concert?" I answered. "Liam, oh my God, you won't believe what just happened," she said breathlessly. Her voice was different, elevated, carrying energy I'd never heard before. Something manic about her excitement made me pause the code compiler and give full attention. "Who's going on? Is everything okay?" I asked. "More than okay. We got invited backstage," she said, words tumbling over each other like she couldn't get them out fast enough. "Sophie and I were at the bar during intermission, and this guy, he's part of the band's crew, recognized my vintage tour shirt from their 2018 show and started talking to us. One thing led to another, and now we're backstage with Ashes and Velvet." I felt small flutter of unease, though I couldn't pinpoint why. "That's incredible, honey. I know how much this means to you," I said. "Liam, I'm standing 10 feet away from Zane Holloway, like actually talking to him. He remembered the Portland show from 2018. Can you believe that? He said the crowd here was one of his favorites from that entire tour," she gushed. The way she said his name again, Zane, carried that same familiarity I'd noticed before, but now felt charged with something more immediate, more dangerous. Some instinct began sounding quiet alarms. "That's amazing, Nat. I'm so happy for you," I managed. "He's exactly like I always imagined he'd be, funny, smart, so down to earth. We've been talking about music, about Portland, about everything. He's nothing like you'd expect a rock star to be," she continued, something in her voice. Intimacy, connection, that seemed beyond casual celebrity conversation. I'd been married to this woman 10 years. I knew every note in her vocal range, every subtle shift in tone. What I was hearing was the sound of someone experiencing attraction. "Where's Sophie?" I asked. "She's around somewhere, talking to the drummer. Liam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer," she said, her tone shifting to something more serious. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. In 10 years of marriage, she'd never prefaced a question that way. Whatever was coming next would change everything between us. "Okay," I said simply. "Do you remember that conversation we had a few years ago about hall passes, about how some couples have agreements about once-in-a-lifetime opportunities with celebrities?" she asked. I remembered. Hypothetical discussion sparked by some article. Late-night conversation between married couples, exploring boundaries that felt safely theoretical. We'd laughed, each naming our celebrity hall pass. Mine, Emma Stone. Hers, Zane Holloway. Harmless fantasy because it seemed impossible. "I remember," I said carefully. "Zane just asked if I wanted to go back to his hotel room," she said. The words hit like physical blows. My entire world tilted, everything I'd believed about my wife, my marriage, my life, reorganizing into completely different configuration. She wasn't sharing exciting celebrity encounter. She was asking permission to cheat. "Natalie, are you seriously asking me what I think you're asking me?" I said, my voice deadly calm. "It doesn't mean anything, Liam. It's Zane Holloway. This will never happen again. It's like winning the lottery. You don't get a second chance at something like this," she pleaded. Her justification revealed everything about how she was thinking, how she valued our marriage against this opportunity. She wasn't torn, wasn't conflicted. She'd already decided. This call was seeking retroactive permission. "You're asking me to give you permission to sleep with another man," I stated flatly. "I'm asking you to understand that this is bigger than just sex. This is about dreams, about possibilities I never thought I'd have. Please, Liam, please try to understand," she begged. Something cold and crystalline settled over me, like watching my emotions from great distance. The trusting husband who had answered this call was disappearing, replaced by someone who understood exactly what needed to happen next. "You have 3 hours," I said. "What?" she asked, confusion clear in her voice. "You have 3 hours to decide who you want to be, Natalie. If you go to that hotel room, if you sleep with him, then our marriage is over. When you walk back into our house, I'll either be married to the woman I trusted for 10 years, or I'll be dealing with a stranger who destroyed everything we built for a few hours with a celebrity, I explained with mechanical precision. Liam, you're being dramatic. It doesn't have to be, she started. 3 hours, starting now. Choose wisely, I interrupted. I hung up before she could respond, finger finding end call button with steady precision. The silence that followed felt massive, like moment after explosion when your ears are ringing and the world has been fundamentally altered. At 12:47 a.m., exactly 3 hours after our conversation, I received a 10-second video message from Sophie's phone. The video showed Natalie kissing Zane Holloway in what appeared to be hotel hallway, her hands tangled in his hair, body pressed against his with unmistakable intent. I forwarded the video to Maya Rothman with message, documentation obtained, proceed with divorce papers. The trusting husband who had answered her phone call was gone. The next 2 hours passed with methodical precision of a well-executed code deployment. I moved through my house like a systems analyst troubleshooting critical failure, each step logical, purposeful, designed to protect the integrity of what remained after the breach had been identified and contained. Maya had texted me a list of immediate action items, and I worked through them with the same focus I'd applied to any complex project. First, I needed to secure the physical environment. At 1:15 a.m., I drove to 24-hour Home Depot on Sandy Boulevard, where fluorescent lighting and empty aisles felt surreal given the magnitude of what I was preparing for. I bought new locks for our front and back doors, high-quality deadbolts that couldn't be defeated by spare keys Natalie carried. The elderly night clerk barely looked up as I paid cash, probably assuming I was dealing with security concern rather than systematic dismantling of a marriage. Back home, I installed new locks with steady hands of someone who had performed routine maintenance countless times. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like closing door on the life I'd known. But there was no emotion in the action, only satisfaction of tasks completed correctly. While I worked, I called Maya Rothman again. The documentation is clear and unambiguous, she told me. Your wife's behavior constitutes adultery under Oregon law, and your prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause is ironclad. She'll leave this marriage with exactly what she brought into it, which, according to your records, was approximately $12,000 in personal savings and a 2019 Honda Civic. The numbers were stark. In 10 years of marriage, Natalie had contributed nothing to our shared wealth. I'd paid mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes. Her contributions had been domestic, cooking, cleaning, decorating, gardening. Valuable in their way, but not financially quantifiable in the divorce she'd just made inevitable. What about spousal support? I asked. Oregon allows for spousal support in long-term marriages, but adultery significantly impacts the court's decision. Combined with her voluntary unemployment and the prenup's language, she'll receive minimal support, if any, Maya explained. And how quickly can we execute this? I pressed. I'll have Jordan Fisk, our process server, ready by 6 p.m. tomorrow. Based on your wife's patterns, what time does she typically return home on Sundays? She asked. I thought about our routine, predictable rhythm of weekends. She usually gets back from errands around 4 p.m., but given everything that's happened, I'm not sure her patterns will hold, I said. We'll position Jordan at 4:30 p.m. If she's not home by then, he'll wait. The key is serving her before she has time to calm down, think strategically, or seek her own legal counsel, Maya replied. As Maya spoke, I found myself moving through our bedroom, beginning the process of packing Natalie's belongings. This wasn't emotional revenge, it was practical necessity. If our marriage was over, she couldn't remain in the home I'd bought and maintained. But more than that, I needed her to understand immediately that her choice had consequences. I worked systematically, filling garbage bags with her clothes, shoes, jewelry, personal items. Each bag represented a year of our marriage, a segment of the life we'd built together, now being dismantled, with the same care I'd applied to decommissioning failed server. Max followed me from room to room, sensing change in the house's energy. When I sat on edge of our bed, my bed now, with one of Natalie's sweaters in my hands, he placed his massive head on my knee and looked up at me with a kind of unconditional loyalty my wife had just proven she didn't possess. "It's gonna be okay, boy," I told him, scratching behind his ears. "It's just going to be different." The dog's presence was oddly comforting. Unlike my wife, Max's affection wasn't conditional, wasn't dependent on excitement or novelty or once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. He was living reminder that loyalty was possible, that commitment could be genuine and lasting. By 3:30 a.m., I had packed 7 large garbage bags with Natalie's possessions. Everything that was clearly hers, everything that held her personal history but not our shared memories. I left our wedding photos, vacation pictures, gifts we'd given each other. Those items would be dealt with later, when legal proceedings were complete. After loading Natalie's belongings, I drove to 24-hour storage facility on outskirts of Portland, where I rented small unit and deposited the 7 bags. I paid for 3 months in advance, enough time for divorce to be finalized and for Natalie to figure out her new living situation. On the drive home, I called Sophie. Went to his hotel room. I tried to talk her out of it, I swear I did. I told her she was making the biggest mistake of her life, but she wouldn't listen. Sophie said when she answered, "Sophie, I need you to understand something. In about 14 hours, Natalie is going to be served with divorce papers. She's going to discover that her decision tonight has cost her everything," I said calmly. "You're not serious," Sophie gasped. "We had prenuptial agreement with infidelity clause. She signed away her rights to marital assets the moment she walked into that hotel room," I explained. After a long pause, Sophie said quietly, "Even if she's my sister, cheating is cheating." By 5 a.m., I was back home, sitting in my kitchen making final preparations. The house felt different already. Quieter, more spacious, like system running more efficiently after unnecessary programs had been terminated. At 4 p.m., I positioned myself where I could monitor security cameras. Jordan Fisk arrived at 4:25 p.m., carrying leather portfolio and calm demeanor of someone who delivered bad news countless times. At 4:47 p.m., Natalie's Honda Civic pulled into our driveway. Through my office window, I watched my wife of 10 years step out of her car with casual confidence of someone returning home from ordinary day. She moved with same easy grace I'd observed that morning in our garden, but everything about the context had changed so fundamentally that she might as well have been a stranger approaching someone else's house. She looked tired but not devastated, rumpled but not ashamed. Her hair was pulled back in messy ponytail, and she wore the same clothes from the night before, now wrinkled and carrying invisible weight of her betrayal. She checked her phone as she walked toward front door, probably expecting to find apologetic text messages from her husband. The sound of Natalie's key hitting new lock mechanism was audible even from my office, sharp, metallic protest that would be her first indication that something had changed. She tried again, jiggling the key with frustrated determination of someone who believed the problem was mechanical rather than intentional. After third failed attempt, she rang the doorbell. Jordan opened the door with practiced calm. Through security camera, I could see Natalie's face cycle through confusion, concern, and beginning of genuine alarm as she processed presence of stranger in her home. "Mrs. Natalie Brennan?" Jordan asked professionally. "Yes, but who are you? Why are you in my house?" she demanded. "I'm Jordan Fisk, licensed process server for the state of Oregon. I'm here to serve you with legal documents on behalf of your husband, Liam Brennan," he explained. I watched her face transform as the words registered. Casual confidence evaporated, replaced by something closer to panic as she tried to process what was happening. "Legal documents? What are you talking about? Where is my husband?" she asked frantically. "Ma'am, I need you to accept service of these documents," Jordan said, extending manila envelope containing divorce papers, financial restraining orders, and formal notice that her adultery had voided her claim to marital assets. "I don't understand. This is some kind of mistake," she protested. "Ma'am, these documents detail the dissolution of your marriage and your legal obligations going forward," Jordan replied. The word dissolution seemed to hit her like physical blow. I watched her stumble backward, hand reaching for door frame to steady herself as reality began to penetrate her shock. "Dissolution? You mean divorce? But we just had a fight. This is crazy," she said desperately. She finally took envelope with trembling hands. "I need to talk to my husband. There's been some kind of misunderstanding," she pleaded. Ma'am, I also need to inform you that effective immediately, you're restrained from accessing joint financial accounts and from entering this property without prior legal arrangement, Jordan continued. During this property? This is my house, she shouted. According to these documents, this property belongs solely to your husband. You have 30 days to arrange for removal of your personal belongings, which are currently in Storage Unit 247 at Secure Space on Powell Boulevard, Jordan explained. I watched Natalie's legs give out. She sat down hard on our front steps, manila envelope falling open in her lap, legal papers scattering like leaves. Her face had gone completely white. Jordan stepped back into house and closed door, leaving Natalie sitting on our front steps, surrounded by legal documents that had just destroyed her life. My phone rang. I let it ring through the voicemail twice before answering on the third call. Liam, what the hell is going on? There's a man in our house saying you're divorcing me, she said, her voice breaking. How was your night with Zane Holloway? I asked calmly. Silence stretched so long I wondered if call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How did you, she started. Sophie sent me a video. 10 seconds of you and him in hotel hallway, making your choice very clear, I said. It was one night. One stupid, meaningless night. How can you throw away 10 years over one mistake? She cried. You didn't make a mistake, Natalie. You made a choice. You chose Zane Holloway over our marriage, I replied coldly. Please, Liam, please don't do this. We can fix this, she begged. The woman I married wouldn't have needed to fix this because she never would have broken it in the first place, I said. I hung up before she could respond, then immediately blocked her number. Through security camera, I watched her gather scattered divorce papers and walk to her car, moving like someone in shock. As her Honda Civic disappeared down our street, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The hardest part was over. 6 months later, I stood in my garden on a crisp October morning, harvesting the last tomatoes from the vegetable plot that had replaced Natalie's rose beds. The transformation felt symbolic, beauty replaced by practicality, ornamental giving way to functional. My Saturday routine had evolved into something entirely my own. Coffee first, then garden work that grounded me after spending weeks immersed in systems and code. Max supervised from his spot under the maple tree, content to watch his human navigate this new version of their shared life. The house had been transformed as well. Natalie's decorative touches, throw pillows in colors I'd never understood, scented candles, artwork chosen for emotional impact, had been replaced by functional minimalism that reflected my actual preferences rather than marriage compromises. The doorbell rang at 10:15 a.m. Through the window, I saw Sophie holding 2 coffee cups and wearing the careful expression of someone bringing unwelcome news. Morning, Liam. I brought coffee from that place on Burnside you used to like, she said as I opened the door. She followed me to the back deck where I'd installed new teak furniture designed for comfort rather than appearance. How are you doing? She asked, studying my face for signs of hidden damage. I'm doing well. Better than well, actually. I'm doing exactly what I want without having to consider anyone else's needs, I replied honestly. That sounds lonely, she said. It sounds peaceful, I countered. Sophie gathered courage to say whatever she'd come to say. I wanted to update you on Natalie. I know you probably don't want to hear about her, but I thought you should know how things have turned out, she said carefully. I'm listening, I said. She's living with our parents again. Has been since about a month after the divorce was finalized. She tried to find her own place, but without work experience or credit, landlords wouldn't take her seriously. Sophie explained. The image of my 35-year-old ex-wife sleeping in her childhood bedroom struck me as both pathetic and appropriate. What about work? I asked. It's been challenging. 10 years out of the workforce is hard to explain to employers, especially when you chose not to work rather than being unable to find employment, Sophie said. Sophie's phrasing revealed the reality Natalie was discovering. Choosing financial dependence for a decade had consequences beyond relationship security. Eventually, she found part-time work at a dental office, filing, answering phones. $15 an hour, maybe 25 hours weekly, when they're busy, she continued. I did the mental math. Maybe $19,000 annually before taxes, less than she used to spend on clothes during our marriage. Our parents are helping with expenses. They're not happy about having a 35-year-old daughter move back home, but they won't let her be homeless, Sophie said. That's generous, I replied. They're frustrated. They ask constantly when she's going to take responsibility for the situation she created. They blame her for what happened, not you, she added. This carried more weight than expected. Learning that her parents held their daughter responsible felt like validation I hadn't realized I needed. What does she say? I asked. Sophie hesitated. She says it was a mistake that shouldn't have cost her entire life. She says you overreacted. The familiar refrain revealed that Natalie still hadn't accepted responsibility. 6 months later, she was still casting herself as victim rather than author of her consequences. She still doesn't understand what she did wrong, I observed. I don't think she does. She talks about it like a moment of weakness that should have been forgiven. Sophie agreed. And what do you tell her? I asked. I tell her that cheating is cheating. I tell her you had every right to protect yourself from someone who would betray you for a celebrity encounter, Sophie said firmly. Have you heard anything about Zane Holloway? I asked. Nothing. According to Natalie, she never heard from him again. He moved on to the next city, probably the next woman. I don't think he even remembers her name, Sophie said. The irony was perfect. Natalie had destroyed a 10-year marriage for an encounter with someone who'd forgotten her before his tour bus left Portland. Does she ever ask about me? I asked. She asks if you're dating anyone, if you seem happy, Sophie replied. And what do you tell her? I pressed. That you're building a good life for yourself, she said. Are you dating anyone? Sophie asked. I'm not closed off to the possibility, but I'm learning the difference between being lonely and being alone. When I do choose to share my life again, it'll be with someone who understands that commitment means something, I replied. Natalie sometimes talks about reconciliation, Sophie said carefully. The suggestion was fundamentally misguided. Sophie, the woman I married, would never have made that phone call. That woman doesn't exist anymore, I said. As Sophie prepared to leave, she paused. What should I tell her about this conversation? She asked. Tell her that I wish her no harm, but I feel no responsibility for the life she chose to create. Tell her that closure doesn't require forgiveness. Sometimes it simply requires protecting your own dignity, I said. That evening, I sat in my office reviewing an email from Maya Rothman suggesting I write about my experience. As Max settled at my feet, I opened a new document titled The 3-Hour Window. 6 months ago, I'd lost a marriage. What I'd actually lost was an illusion, and what I'd gained was more valuable, the knowledge that I would never again compromise my self-respect for someone else's comfort. Justice didn't always arrive with dramatic flair. Sometimes it was simply the natural result of choices playing out over time. Sometimes justice was just refusing to rescue someone from the life they'd chosen to create. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.